The president of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, has confirmed that his administration is in contact with the U.S. government. He made the announcement after U.S. media reported the establishment of back channels between both nations on Monday.
For many months, we have been in touch with the U.S. as we search for dialogue in Venezuela. I have also looked for ways that President Donald Trump can talk about Venezuela, and with respect that he listens to the truth of the Bolivarian revolution of the 21st century, and not to believe the information that his officials and collaborators give him, a fake Venezuela, and over that basis that they make threats, attacks, sanctions. I confirm that for months there has been communication between senior officials from the Trump administration and the Bolivarian government that I preside over. This communication took place under my express authorization.
Our correspondent, Luis Tavera, in Caracas, has the latest.
The government of President Nicolás Maduro has confirmed that Venezuela is actively engaged in direct communications with the U.S. government in the hopes of maintaining peace and of resolving any differences there could be between both countries. President Maduro issued the assurance in response to rumors spread by the Venezuelan opposition, who were hoping to incite violence while continuing to openly call for military intervention in the Bolivarian Republic. During his speech on Monday, the president also spoke about the ongoing attacks by the White House on the Venezuelan people and on Venezuela's economic development. To summarize, President Maduro cited the unilateral economic sanctions imposed by the U.S., the seizure of Venezuela's government's assets abroad, and the freezing of Venezuela's funds in foreign banks as reasons for the recent slowdown in social programs. Many Venezuelans echo the president's sentiments as they continue to collect signatures in the No More Trump campaign. The goal of this anti-Trump drive is to gather 13 million signatures to back a manifesto planned to present in September to the 74th session of the General Assembly of the United Nations.
That was Luis Tavera with that report. And the Venezuelan Vice President Delcy Rodriguez has met with the Russian foreign minister during an official visit to Moscow. Sergei Lavrov said Russia will continue to support Venezuela in the face of the U.S. blockade, while the Venezuelan vice president spoke of the increasing cooperation between both nations.
We have always been and will always be true to these principles of international law, and we will always be united with you. We will stand for people's rights to choose the path of their development and strictly oppose any unlawful, illegal methods of blackmail and pressure.
The exchange between Russia and Venezuela is happening more often and in larger volumes. I had the opportunity to assess this with the chairman of the High-Level Commission, Yuri Borisov, how our affairs are progressing within the framework of this commission, and I see that we have made serious progress in all areas.
The Foreign Relations Committee in the Brazilian Chamber of Deputies has approved a deal to cede use of the Alcantara Launch Center to the United States. The deal has come under criticism for relinquishing Brazilian sovereignty, and the Socialist and Liberty Party denounced the negative effect it will have on the Quilombo Afro-Brazilian communities in the area. It must still be passed by the Science and Technology and the Constitution and Justice Committees before going to a vote in the full chamber. The agreement to cede the launch center was reached in March this year during President Bolsonaro's visit to the United States. Human rights lawyers in France have warned that the policies of the Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro in the Amazon region could amount to crimes against humanity. This comes as the Brazilian Space Institute reported that nearly 73,000 wildfires have been recorded in Brazil this year, more than half of them in Amazonia. That's an increase of 80% compared with last year. Brad Meir reports from Sao Paulo.
I'm standing on the north side of São Paulo, where the entire city is engulfed in smog, as it has been since Monday, in a weather phenomenon that's related to smoke coming up from the Amazon rainforest, where thousands of fires are currently raging. Now, every year in the dry season in the Amazon region, small farmers and ranchers practice slash and burn agriculture techniques. They burn the scrub on their land, and it creates nutrients in the soil. It's not good for the environment, but it's hard to convince them to stop doing it. But what's happening this year is different. President Jair Bolsonaro is giving out signals to the big loggers and agribusiness companies that they can invade natural parks and indigenous reservations and chop down trees and burn whatever they want. And so there's huge fires out of control, animals are dying, and the risk is that if he continues acting this way, there could be a phenomenon called dieback, in which the entire forest could burn down uncontrollably if it reaches a certain point of deforestation. And some biologists are predicting this could happen by 2030. Now, if Bolsonaro stays in power acting this way, the odds are that this is really going to happen. And since the Amazon provides the world with 20% of its oxygen, it would be a catastrophe.
Meanwhile, as wildfires have destroyed more than 500,000 hectares in the Amazon region of Bolivia in the last 2 weeks, President Evo Morales announced that more equipment will assist with putting out the blaze. Our correspondent, Freddy Morales, has the details from La Paz.
The emergency cabinet includes 5 ministers, and they, along with the vice president, Alvaro Garcia Linera, traveled at midday to Rebore, on the border with Brazil. That's where an operations center has been set up to try to bring under control the wildfires that have been burning for more than 2 weeks now across the country, but mainly in that tropical region of the Santa Cruz department. The ministries that are part of this environmental emergency cabinet are the President's office, the Cabinet office, the Environment Ministry, the Rural Development Ministry, and the Ministry of Health. At the same time, the Minister of Finance has been given the go-ahead to contract a giant plane that is specially designed to fight forest fires from the air. Let's listen to that announcement by President Evo Morales.
After evaluating all the work done, I've authorized the Minister of Economy to hire a Boeing 747 supertanker plane, so it can help us put out the several fires that are affecting the eastern areas of Bolivia.
We are told that this plane has a capacity to carry 70,000 liters of water on each flight. We should remember that there are already 4 helicopters working in the region, pouring water onto the areas that are on fire. There is also a helicopter on standby to evacuate people at risk. But that hasn't been necessary so far. Civil pilots from Santa Cruz have made themselves available, along with their light aircraft, to help in any way needed to fight the fires from the air. President Morales has made clear that although many of the fires have been extinguished, the strength and direction of the wind means that the flames often break out again. In the frontier area of Rebore, where the fires are most intense, classes have been suspended indefinitely in the schools since yesterday, until the emergency is over. The Ministry of Health has begun distributing medicines for respiratory problems caused by the poor air quality, and also for eye problems. A lot of people in the area are suffering from these sorts of problems, and the authorities are giving them eye drops. The official figures are reporting more than 500,000 hectares have been burned to the ground in the last 2 weeks.
After the break, we speak with Jordan Florit, author of Red Wine and Arepas, How Football is Becoming Venezuela's Religion. Don't touch that remote.
Our actions have an impact on the environment. It's our responsibility to change for the sake of our planet. Let's be part of this transition. Watch, preserve, and protect your Earth. Green Zone. Wednesdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. Now, while Venezuela is usually known for its love of baseball, more and more people in the country are becoming interested in football, by far the dominant sport in Latin America and the Caribbean. The Vino Tinto, as the Venezuelan national team is known, come off the back of a strong Copa America performance with memorable results, including a draw with five-time World Cup winners Brazil. To take a deeper look at the growing football phenomenon in Venezuela, we're joined live by Jordan Florit, author of the upcoming book Red Wine and Arepas, How Football is Becoming Venezuela's Religion. Hello, and thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So Jordan, why did you decide to write about Venezuela and football in particular?
So I've long had an interest in Latin America in general. The father's side of my family was Spanish, and lost my granddad at a young age. So I really tried to sort of reconnect with my roots, and then from an interest in the Spanish-speaking world, it became continental, really. Like my interest turned to Latin America when I met my wife, and she was really passionate about the language, the culture, and the music. So I started to read more about the continent in general, and my favourite books have always been on history, culture, and football. So I started reading books about the continent in general. And when I got to Venezuela, a lot of the books are about Hugo Chavez and the revolution and Simón Bolívar, and I read all those books, and then I turn normally to a football book to learn more about the country, because I think football is a great anthropological tool to learn about community, society and culture. But there isn't, not in English anyway, there are no books on Venezuelan football in English. And that's something really that I wanted to look into more. Like I said, I think it's a great reflection of society, but as there wasn't a book about football, I sort of left it alone, and I didn't really give it any of my attention. And then in 2017, when the Vino Tinto did so well at the Under-20 World Cup, my interest peaked again. And I did one interview with Christian Cáceres Jr., who's a midfielder for New York Red Bulls. And that went really well. And Venezuelan football fans all over the world really gave me messages of support, told me that they were really happy with the article and that someone was covering Venezuela in the English language. And that's how it evolved.
The president of the Venezuelan Football League, Ruben Villavicencio, says that football unites Venezuelans in spite of the difficult political situation in the country. Can you elaborate further on this?
Yeah, so what he told me is that for Venezuelans outside of the country, it's their shield that like reunites them with their homeland. And for Venezuelans inside the country, it's the only thing really that can give them hope and a symbol of neutrality and unity amongst all the political discourse. And I really agree with that. He said it's much more than football. And what I think football offers a country that isn't offered by other sports, for example, baseball, which has always been historically the main sport of the country, is international representation on a global stage. The World Cup is the biggest sporting event. It's the most watched event of any form in the world. And qualification for Qatar in 2022 would mean so much more than just football for the country, because it's a chance for the Venezuelan population, the people, whether football fans or not, to have representation on an international stage that is by and large very positive.
Now, you've mentioned the World Cup not being too far off, and the Venezuelan national team has reached its highest ever FIFA rank, 26th in the world. What's next for the Vino Tinto?
So they've got a really busy 12 to 18 months of competitive football. Early next year, they've got the Olympic qualifiers, which if they qualify for will be in the summer just after the Copa America. And obviously, they've got the World Cup qualifiers as well for Qatar. So it's a very busy schedule for the senior team. And Rafa Dudamel, who has also been the coach of the Under-20s at the same time, is really at a point in which he needs to decide whether they continue down the form of football that has got them this far. When he took over, they were 70-something in the ranks. So it's a really big increase, but he needs to decide whether they continue with the brand of football that has been hard to be organised and robust, or whether maybe with the players at his disposal now, more talented than ever before, they try to be a bit more creative and adventurous.
Now, you've mentioned your relatives being interested in football and really having interest in your project from them and being inspired by them, but what else could you attribute your interest in this project to?
So I think football can explain trends and problems of society so well. I think football is a reflection of society, and I think it's a great tool to analyse and examine what is going on in the world. So I think football can be so much more than just a game on the pitch. You can use football to explain people's feelings, societies, emotions. And what I want to do with the book really is tell all these stories that aren't being told. At the moment, the conversation on Venezuela is one-dimensional. The only narrative that exists is political. And I really want to give another voice. I don't want to change the conversation. I want to add to it. I want to give voices to the many stories that are out there that just aren't being told in English.
So your book on Venezuelan football was funded through Kickstarter. Why did you opt for this instead of a conventional publishing deal?
So I was offered a publishing deal for the book, and on paper it seemed like a good offer. They wanted to print 1,000 copies of the book, and I took real confidence from that. But I found the deal quite exploitative. It boiled down to 90% of the profits being for the publisher, and that's not really what I want. But I don't want to achieve that from the book. I'm not writing this book for money. That would be a bad business plan to write a book for money. But what I do want to do is be able to put that money that would have been profit for a business into the project itself. I want this book to do as much justice as possible for Venezuela and its football fans. And the response that I've got through doing it on Kickstarter has been amazing. I have a friend called Kevin from Caracas who is running the Instagram account for the book. And that's really allowed me to keep in touch with Venezuelan football fans that are really willing this project on from afar. Whereas in England, a lot of the people getting behind the project by pre-ordering a copy have enabled this to go forward. The Kickstarter campaign runs until September the 3rd. And we had a target of £5,000. That's what was needed to produce this book. And we hit it in 2 weeks. So the support has been overwhelming. I didn't know what to expect, but it's been great.
So where can our viewers who are interested in purchasing the book find it?
So they can go on Kickstarter and search for Red Wine and Arepas and it will come up. Alternatively, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm the false libero. And there's also a Facebook page for the book, the title of the book, Red Wine and Arepas.
Thank you so much, Jordan, for joining us. Football is a game not just on the pitch. Have a good day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Still to come, we visit Western Cuba, where the government is implementing a sustainable development plan. Stay with us.
Acompañamos a los pueblos que resisten en cada una de sus luchas.
Somos esa ventana que se abre para visibilizarlos entre fronteras.
Thursdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. 5 European Union states have agreed to take in migrants who were stranded for weeks on the open arms rescue ship in the Mediterranean. On Tuesday night, the 100 migrants disembarked on the Italian island of Lampedusa after a judge ordered that the ship be seized. The far-right Italian Interior Minister Matteo Salvini had earlier refused to allow the ship to dock, saying the country had borne too much responsibility for handling African migration to Europe. An EU spokeswoman in Brussels said Spain, France, Germany, Luxembourg and Portugal have agreed to take them in. The outgoing chief of Sudan's military council, General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, has been sworn in as head of the newly formed Sovereign Council. the 11-member council, which will run the country for a 3-year transitional period until elections. The council replaces the military council, which governed Sudan since the ousting of former President Omar al-Bashir in April.
I am here and present Aisha Moussa Said bin Nasser Mohammed Ibrahim from Kordofan. I stand to represent the women of my country, Sudan, and I will work hard to make this nation proud among the other great nations.
Presidents Yoweri Museveni of Uganda and Paul Kagame of Rwanda have signed a peace deal to end their diplomatic tensions. The two neighbors have, over the last 3 years, accused each other of interference in their internal affairs. The agreement also says they will resume the cross-border activities between both countries. In Nigeria, the country has marked 3 years since its last case of the wild polio virus. According to health officials, the progress in fighting the crippling disease could result in the African continent declaring polio or being declared polio-free next year. Africa's last case of wild polio was recorded in Nigeria's Borno state in August 2016.
Let's remember that the battle is not over yet. We have to maintain our efforts and intensify them to make sure the historic gains are sustained and that polio-free certification is obtained for Nigeria in due time next year.
Haitian legislators are set to resume debate on a motion to impeach President Jovenel Moïse later on Wednesday. At least 21 deputies had filed the motion accusing Moïse of high treason, claiming that he had violated the Constitution and was leading the country to a social crisis. Now, when the matter came up for debate last week, Monday, only a few deputies were present at the start, forcing an adjournment. Meanwhile, the opposition is trying to stop Haiti's fourth attempt to ratify a new government and prime minister. The opposition has asked for the postponement of all activities scheduled for this Friday related to the presentation of Prime Minister-designate Fritz William Michel and his cabinet to the chamber. The request was made in a letter submitted to the chamber president, signed by 8 out of the 21 opposition deputies. The opposition informs of a court appeal concerning the order of tax discharge granted to Michel by the Superior Court of Accounts. Cuba's Guanacaste's Peninsula is a paradise in the westernmost tip of the island, where the government is implementing a sustainable development plan. Dozens of agroecological farms have been created, which bring together the social and economic well-being of people and the protection of natural resources.
We have left behind the bustling city, and now we are on the way to the peninsula of Guanacaste. This magical place is known for its amazing ecology, virgin beaches, and unforgettable sunsets. The peninsula has very few inhabitants, but they do not shy off from telling travelers about the many wonders of their hidden corner of the world.
The peninsula is the best. Everything is beautiful here. People are seeing it and will see it.
We are visiting the El Palmar Agroecological Farm, which is one of such 25 farms in the area, but the plan is to create 36. The main objective of these farms is to protect the forests of the peninsula, but farmers also produce organic food for the population and tourists, and to export abroad.
The program is about producing more for the nation and to export. That is our job. We have a cashew fruit farm. We want to explore the production of nougat wines. We also want to produce cashew for the export and start an industry.
The head of the El Palmar farm, Rolando Moreno, proudly shows thousands of avocado bushes, which include 8 avocado variations. On his farm, he also grows citruses, mango, guava, corn, banana, and coconut. In the El Palmar farm, they also handle the processing of the fruits, since one goal is to create more employment opportunities.
Before the revolution, the people lived here together in a very bad situation, because there was no science and technology to help them. There was nothing, just brutality on the farm. Now, we're prospering. We have science and technology, and also the special benefit that the commander often visits our farm.
Despite being 95 years old, Commander Julio Camacho Aguilera, who is an icon of the revolution and is also head of development works in the Guanacaste Peninsula, visits the farm to oversee operations every month.
All the farms, all the houses have electricity provided through several systems, which is very important because circumstances in the Guanahacavives are often difficult. But we also have TV and radio coverage throughout the territory.
The agroecological farms of Guanahacavives are a dream come true in a place that was once forgotten and uninhabitable. But today, this land is a paradise for sustainable development, which not only improves the life of locals, but preserves this magical ecosystem.
And with that, we've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Doris Polo. Thank you so much for watching.
The Pakistani journalist Tariq Ali examines the mass media influence promoted by